afternoon, grade 11 C learners. Today we are going to be talking about the Russian state, looking at many structures where we are going to be looking at the social structure, the political structure, and the economic structure of the Russian state. Now, as you well know, each and every country has an organizational structure which includes these structures, economy, polity, and social. So now, looking at Russia being the country in the discussion right now, looking at communism in Russia from 1900s to 1940s, we are going to dig deep today to try and understand what led to the revolution, the 1905 revolution in Russia. So now, by understanding the political structure, the social structure, and the economic structure, we may come at a certain conclusion that this was the cause of the 1905 revolution in Russia. Alright, now let's look at the political structure. Now, I don't know if you are aware of this, but many countries before the 19th century were ruled by kings and queens, which meant that there was no any form of government, and which meant that whoever ascended to the throne was from the family. Now, Russia back in 1894 was ruled by an emperor who was known as Tsar Nicholas II. Now, Tsar Nicholas II ruled Russia from 1894, and he had an empress who was a Russian. She was known as Alexandra. Yes, she was called Alexandra. Now, Tsar Nicholas II ruled Russia, and he relied mostly on his officials, or let me say ministers, to help him carry out his orders. He relied on the army, he relied on his officials or his ministers in order to maintain order in his country. Now, another interesting fact about Tsar Nicholas II is that he was a very kind gentleman, but he was also a weak ruler, which made him be incompetent in ruling the Russian state. So he was kind and gentle, but he was weak, and he also was incompetent in ruling the Russian state. Also, the people of Russia did not much like the fact that Tsar Nicholas II married a German woman, or made a German woman to be their queen. So with that being said, we find that the Russian people, they disliked Alexandra because they thought that she was ignorant of the Russian customs and culture, or the Russian people at large. So that is basically the political structure of Russia. Now, outlining the few points for those of you who were left behind, we said that the political structure of Russia is as follows. It was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II from 1894. Tsar Nicholas II relied mostly on his officials to carry out orders. He used his army and the nobles to maintain order in the country. Tsar Nicholas II was a gentle and a kind, but also a weak ruler, which made him to be incompetent in ruling the Russian state. Also, Tsar Nicholas married a German woman, which made the Russian people to dislike her because he made her a queen, and the Russian people thought of her to be ignorant of the Russian norms, customs, and cultures. Now, moving on to the social structure of Russia. Now, we all know that different societies consist of different cultures, different norms, different division systems. Now, as Russia, because we are looking at Russia before the introduction of communism, we may understand that Russia was deeply divided into many segments, or into many classes. Yes, into many social classes. So the society of Russia was deeply divided, so which means there were unequal distributions of wealth and there were many social classes in Russia. There were wealthy nobles, there were bourgeoisie, there were peasants, and then there were urban workers. So looking at the nobles, so the nobles were very, very, very wealthy, and then they owned most of the land in Russia, and they occupied they occupied the highest positions in the army and in administration. I think they were about 2 or 1% of the Russian population. And then after the wealthy nobles, we have the middle class capitalists, which in our last lesson I told you those that were bourgeoisie. So bourgeoisie are the middle class capitalists. Now the middle class capitalists were very educated. So they were educators, they were doctors, they were engineers. They were very educated and they were well off. And then after the bourgeoisie or the middle class capitalists, we have the peasants. Now the peasants, they occupied or they were found in self-governing village communes. They either worked for the nobles or they occupied very small plots of land. Now the peasants were not able to read and write. Now if you happen to find that there were peasants who could read and write, there was just a small number of them. Now right after the peasants, we find the urban workers. Now the urban workers were relatively small and they worked in very dreadful conditions. All right, now after the social structure of Russia, we have to look at the economic structure of Russia. Now we understand that each and every economy of a country determines its wealth. Now a country that is very stable, when we are looking at its economic structure, we find that they are very or they occupy highest positions in the world. Now because the economic structure of Russia way before, it's lagged behind from other Western European countries, we find that the peasants in Russia, they used very old-fashioned farming methods, which meant that Russia had low or less production when we are looking at commercial farming. And we find that industrial revolution in Russia only began after the 19th century, or when the 19th century was about to end. Alright, we also find that the transport infrastructure in Russia was less developed. We find that there were few railroads, there were few roads, and there were few also canals. So those are the structures of Russia. So to outline the very important points that we spoke about, we said that today we are going to look at the structures of Russia. So we looked at the political structure, we looked at the social structure and the economic structure. We said that in political structure, Russia was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II, who was very incompetent, who married a German woman. Yes, and then we looked at the social structure, where we said that Russia had many social classes that were unequal when we are looking at wealth. And then we said that Russia, when we are looking at the economic structure, lagged behind due to resources and infrastructure. Now, I have I don't know if it's clear for you to see, but I'm going to put it behind me so that you can clearly see what I'm going to be talking about here. This is your class activity that you have to complete right now and submit it to me. So this is an activity, and there is a pyramid here. And in this pyramid, there are different social classes and there are different written words here. So these are the questions. So you will answer these questions from this. So you'll take your answers from here, and based on your understanding, you'll have to answer these questions. Now the questions are as follows: who is the top and who is at the bottom? What does this cartoon entails about Russia? Is there an equal distribution of wealth throughout Russia? With such distinct class systems, will this create social problems or prevent them? How important reaching how important is reaching in Russia? Does this affect the time? Now, these are all the questions that you have to answer, and I'm going to put it on the screen for you to see. Thank you.